Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, the Emissary. Yeah, it sounds intriguing. It's going to be intriguing, our talk and the episode. Speaking of intriguing, you know what? You've been hearing about patreon.com/IABD from us for a long time. From me, especially on this podcast, specifically. Great way to support the network. Great way to support us, because we got a lot of years ahead of us. So the more you can support us, the longer we can get through all the Trek. And now, not only are you going to hear us, join Patreon at a low $2 level. You can see the video of us. You can see me, Jimmy-Jerome, Keith, our guest stars, and whatever's behind them. Train pictures, cats, you name it, you can see it. You can see our expressions. You can see us talking to people off screen. That's right. And it's a very low level. And you get the good feeling of supporting us. And another way to help us, just keep listening to the Emissary on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts have survived Loxana Troy and returned.
This is Steven.
Okay, well, at least one of my earbuds is in at this point.
That's Keith. And I'm Jimmy-Jerome. Today we were talking The Emissary, which, honestly, the second I hear the title reminds me of Deep Space Nine, because Sisko is the emissary, and it's a big thing, but apparently...
I almost thought it was going to be a reference to it somehow.
I'm sorry?
I almost thought it was going to be a reference to it somehow, but...
No, Sisko isn't dealt with in Next Gen at all, but in a way, you know, an emissary is kind of an ambassador, and, you know. So Richard Manning, this is his first episode that he's got a teleplay by after Symbiosis. And then he also will write Who Watches the Watchers and Allegiance of Next Gen, as well as one episode of Deep Space Nine, Paradise, that he co-wrote with Hans Beimler. Hans Beimler, on the other hand, has a lot more writing credits. He also co-wrote the teleplay The Arsenal of Freedom, Symbiosis, and he story by for the Schizoid Man. And then he'll have one more episode Next Gen coming up, Allegiance, but he wrote like 17 episodes of Deep Space Nine and teleplay by 8 more, including the series finale of Deep Space Nine. And some of the other best episodes of Deep Space Nine, like Trials and Tribulations, Bada Bing Bada Bang, Sacrifice of Angels, Far Beyond the Stars. So this is one of DS9's best writers wrote this episode, in my opinion.
There's an episode called Bada Bing Bada Bang.
There is, and it's
oh my
delightful.
God!
And unfortunately for Steven, it is a holodeck episode. It's a different. It's not just them going into the holodeck to have fun. There's a whole different thing to it. So we'll get there. But it is.
It's a chili cook-off.
Final season, I believe, but it's.
I thought it was them
in a Las Vegas casino. So
okay, I thought it was them going back to the gangster planet.
No. There is a holodeck character in Deep Space Nine that it regularly reoccurs, and he lives in old Las Vegas, and so we go there a lot.
The Las Vegas part, you've got me with the Las Vegas part, so that might balance out with the...
And he sings the old Sinatra standards.
Oh, that's cool. All right, now I'm looking... When is this? 10 years from now?
Oh, God.
Long Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only like 8 years.
Songs. But I remember specifically The Way You Look Tonight gets sung in the series finale. Ooh. So, yeah, it's great.
I like that.
Anyway, so yeah, these are like some seriously credited writers here, especially Hans. And it was directed by Cliff Bole, who directed 25 episodes of Next Gen. So I feel like they put some of their best people on this episode, and it shows, in my opinion. First impressions?
Yeah, I was running through how much I loved this episode or not. But I did enjoy it, and obviously, Kalar, is that
Kalar, yes.
Right? And the performance by the actress,
Suzie Plakson.
Suzie Plakson elevate. I mean, every time she's on, I'm like, I'm interested. And I thought there were some issues, like, with consistency as far as the relationship, and maybe that's just the nature of romantic and that's the nature of the romantic comedies, that's the nature, not romantic comedies, romances, and the nature of their relationship. But I thought it was definitely always interesting. And like I said, anytime she was on, I was engaged and interested. And not even, it's a Klingon woman, because we've had plenty of them. And I don't know, maybe there is a pattern, because I think every time there's a Klingon woman, I'm fascinated.
But she's only half, so she has good teeth.
And that goes back to our last episode where we talked about
So I do.
You're right. She has great teeth.
I do want to talk just briefly about Suzie Plakson. This is actually her second episode of Next Generation, because earlier this season she played Dr. Salar, The Vulcan that Keith's been crushing on all season.
Yeah.
She will play Kalar in a second episode of The Next Generation next year.
Okay.
And then she will also be in Star Trek Voyager playing a female Q in one episode. She did 18 episodes of Mad About You, so that she's pretty well known for that. She will do an episode of Enterprise, and her last credit so far, she's only got 35 credits, but her last credit was she did 15 episodes of How I Met Your Mother as Marshall's sister Judy. Sadly, she did not guest star in Seinfeld, so Steven probably...
Yeah, I was confident she did. She was in some other, the J. Thomas show. I can't remember that sitcom.
Love and War?
That's it.
Yeah, she did 67 episodes of that.
Yeah.
She also did 14 episodes of Dinosaurs, the television series. Her main character being Monica de Vertebrae. I don't remember that character, but she did a lot of stuff. While we're on it, I did want to mention, too, that this was the second and final episode of Anne Ramsey came back. She was in earlier in the season as like Geordi's assistant chief engineer for one episode. We said she'd be back, and then she came back as that same character, except now instead of an assistant chief engineer, she's in Wesley's seat on the bridge.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Well, that reminds me of a correction I have to make from like forever ago when Nikki Cox was a guest star.
Oh, yeah.
I was completely mixed up in my head with Unhappily Ever After and Grounded for Life, which is why I thought that the redheaded daughter on that was like, wait, what? But no, I remember having watched both of them separately at some other point, and I was like, that's why I was so thrown off.
Did you recognize the tactical officer manning Worf's station?
Yes.
Diedrich Bader.
What? I didn't.
Space, Napoleon Dynamite, Jay and Silent Bob.
He's a very prolific voice actor as well.
He is. BoJack Horseman.
Napoleon Dynamite, Office Space.
And of course, Batman.
Yeah, so many. He's got over 200 credits.
This was only his third credit on IMDb. So this is very early.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it.
This is his only Star Trek credit. He's never returned to Star Trek since.
Oh, I froze it and went back. I was like, freeze it. Yep.
How long was he on screen? I didn't see it at all.
He did a couple scenes.
Yeah, I think he had one line, right?
I'm not sure. He's just credited as tactical officer.
But I think he yelled out something like...
even before he spoke, and then when he spoke, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely...
Me taking notes and stuff.
And he's only like 22 at this point, so it's a super young version of him.
Considering how successful he is, that's very interesting. And somehow he never did Seinfeld either.
No.
So the other two guest stars I have listed, Lance Legault played Captain Katomiak, which was the Klingon captain, best known for Mortal Kombat Annihilation and Stripes, the movie with Bill Murray. He played Colonel Glass in that. 96 credits, but this is his only Star Trek credit. And then the last guest star I have here is Admiral Gromek, who chewed out Picard, was played by Georgianne Johnson. This is also her only episode of Star Trek, but she's best known for Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, Midnight Cowboy, you know.
I'm sorry, did you say she chewed him out? I mean...
Well, sort of. And she was in an episode of Seinfeld. In The Beard, she played Mrs. Stevenson.
I remember Lance Legault from Stripes now that I look at him. He's the guy who, when John Larroquette's character is using his telescope to look at the girls in the shower, he's the guy who comes in and interrupts it. And the telescope goes out the window. So, oh God, I wish I was a loofah. It's right, but he comes in and ends that sequence. So,
do you remember Georgianne from Seinfeld?
No. Who played her? Who I'm sorry. I'm off on my
She was
side.
the Admiral in this.
Oh, okay.
She was in the Seinfeld episode, The Beard.
Oh.
So we start the episode with a poker scene, but I noticed O'Brien wasn't invited this time, even though he's in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Still, I mean, it's the regular group now.
Except O'Brien apparently isn't part of it.
Yep.
I did think this poker scene for a long time in the episode, I wondered what the point of it was, but it relates to the final climax of the episode. And I was like, oh, they put this poker scene in just for the climax. That's actually kind of interesting and sort of clever.
What? I didn't connect it. So is it the Klingons never bluff?
Yeah, Klingons never bluff, and then Geordi says, yeah, right.
Yeah,
well, Geordi's correct, because by the end of the episode, Worf has to do a major bluff.
Yeah.
Something about they were called like an Iceman and so forth, essentially during the poker game, and this is what Kalar was saying about him when she got there as well. Mm-hmm. He was always ice cold, and he didn't have to be.
And I'll say, and I'm glad, it connects eventually, but it's just a fun. These scenes have both been fun. Is this the second poker one scene you've done?
Yeah, at least. And
they're really long, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I enjoy both of them. This was fun.
And the poker scenes continue all the way through to the series finale. So
cool.
They're not going away anytime soon.
They're fun.
Yeah.
I did think it was odd that Data didn't seem to know vocabulary for poker. Like somebody threw out a common term.
Yeah.
It was bend versus fold. I think his point was to understand the reason why the synonyms were important or significant, that there's some sort of difference.
But if he read up on poker, it would always say fold, it would never say bend. So
it's just
also
he got that from the humor episode. He got it from Joe Piscopo.
Also, with as advanced and intelligent as Data is there a possibility he ever shuffles without stacking the deck?
I thought about that too when he was doing it. I thought they would show him hyper speed it up, so it would look like he was doing it faster than he should have been.
I don't think he would cheat, though.
I don't think he'd cheat.
Oh, that's fair.
He can't forget where cards are.
Well, he can if he doesn't look at them.
If he doesn't look, yeah.
Yeah. He'd see some of them as they come in, though.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's no way he doesn't accidentally stack the deck every time, whether he wants to or not. So we get out of the poker scene, and we meet an ambassador that's been transported in a probe, which I thought was interesting and weird and cool. And also, I'm not at all claustrophobic, but how scary and dangerous would it be to be in just that shell rocketing through space for hours?
I am claustrophobic, and there's no way I could do that without being asleep.
Well, I was under the impression that she was in some sort of stasis.
Stasis.
She had a breathing mask, but I don't think she was asleep necessarily. But if you think about it, like, she has no way to see what's going on outside. And I know most of space is empty, but any ship could have stopped and intercepted her. That's really...
Oh, that is kind of scary if you think of it that way.
Isn't there a more consistent way? Because this is the second episode we've had someone in some form of stasis going across the galaxy. It seems
this
like
episode would have been a lot better if when they woke her up, they had a big tank of fish for her to stick her hand.
Right. I feel like there's a best practices for that, and I don't think we found it yet. But, well, I will say, you know what? I'll tell you the best practices. The con ship, because the pajamas they wore seem to keep those guys in great shape. So I'm going to say that is the best practice so far.
I do want to know how they stopped the probe, because it was going at warp 9, right? Traveling. And they had to match its speed and tractor beam it to grab it. But then they didn't slow down or stop it in any way. They just beamed it aboard. Wouldn't you have to deactivate that warp engine before you could beam it aboard?
And then otherwise it'd go right through the ship. You're right.
Wait, did they actually bring the whole probe, or was it just a vessel on?
No, they beamed the whole probe on.
Okay, I thought maybe she was like inside a coffin inside the probe or something, but
no, because we saw that on the outside too, and that whole probe's only a little over 2 meters. That would
have been great. Did you guys shut down the engine? Oh yeah, we got it. They beamed it aboard, just bam, right up the
O'Brien was on the transporter, and he's sorry than that.
Well, all right. There's also the possibility that there's like since they were rendezvousing, I mean, it could have been programmed to decelerate at some point. Once the tractor beam.
And tractor beamed it was still moving.
They beamed up the version of the ship that left before it hit warp drive. They beamed up that version. They cleared it of all diseases and barnacles.
There were very few issues I have with this episode, but that was one of them. I don't think they ever showed how they stopped the probe.
No, that's reasonable. I just didn't catch that. That is interesting.
I will say though, it was a cool bit of mystery though. There's plenty of episodes where it's like, oh, what a device. Oh, what a surprise, whatever. But I thought that one, I actually enjoyed that one because I didn't look ahead at all, so I didn't know who it was going to be. So I enjoyed that.
I had forgotten as well, and so I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh my god, so.
You know who Kalar is, Stephen, before this episode?
I did not.
Okay.
No. So it was so for me it was like, oh, okay, I'm interested in that.
The fact that they had to send her is a little confusing to me. I get why they had to rush to stop the Klingon ship.
Yep.
But given that her only plan was to blow him up, they could have told Picard that over subspace. I don't think they needed her there to do that.
Well, and can you guys help me with the whole sleeper ship thing? Because did they just find out about it?
Yeah, that I wondered that as well. Except the way I justify that is Klingons probably weren't keeping very good records 75 years ago.
Yeah.
And so censors picked it up and they're like, oh yeah, we forgot.
Oh,
Japanese
hey.
people are still in that cave and we forgot to call them home after World War II.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, and we actually, when they brought that up, I thought of there's that movie with Lee Marvin where he's on an island in the South Pacific and there's a Japanese guy who doesn't know the war ended and they battle. I can't remember the name of the movie. Actually, I remember the Mad Magazine spoof of it more than I remember the movie. But
I also feel like the Federation's got to have a big problem with blowing up the ship. And maybe that's why they needed her, that they're like, oh, we can just wash our hands and let her make that call. And she's half Klingon, so the Klingons will accept that.
Yeah.
But it just
do you think that they knew that was her plan all along? Or do you think that she even knew that was her plan before she got there?
I think so, because she was very insistent right away. We just got to blow them up. There's no other way. Which I actually remember this episode quite a bit, because there was an earlier episode this season where we saw Worf's calisthenics program, and they were fighting Shiny Skull and everything, and I was like, I don't remember this episode, but I remember this program. This is the episode I remember it from, now that I saw it again. And I did remember the bluff ending before we got to it. I was like, oh yeah, duh, there's an easy out on this. Just pretend.
Just to go back to the movie I mentioned with Lee Marvin, Hell in the Pacific, and the quote-unquote Japanese guy was the great Toshiro Mifune, and it was directed by John Borman. So I recommend that movie, 1968.
Well, conversely for me, I did remember the episode, or at least of it, but I had forgotten the bluff ending. The only thing I remembered were the fingernails in the palm, and that will come to play later on in my notes. Yeah. And that was pretty much it. I mean, I remember who the character is. I remember a little bit more about her next appearance, but I
remember a lot. Her appearance, it has, to me, she has an outsized role. I was surprised she was only in 2 episodes, because to me, she's such a important character in The Next Generation and in Worf's arc overall. And I know that a lot of that has to do with her second appearance, but still, I was like, oh, she only did 2? That doesn't seem like enough.
Same thing with Geordi's love interest, who I already forgot from those 2 appearances. It seemed like kind of a waste, and so in a way.
Sonia Gomez.
Yes,
but Kalar will have a much longer lasting effect on Worf than she does on Geordi.
Indeed.
Which we won't spoil for Steven.
Right.
Picard and Worf. Personal versus professional reasons. I really dug that scene where Picard's like, do you have a professional reason for not working with her? Nope. Personal reason? Yep. And then Picard doesn't even order him to work with her at that point. He just waits. So Worf's like, I withdraw my complaint. That was a good leader.
That was a nice moment.
I noted that collectively along with the later interaction on the bridge when Worf came in just came in hot and was just all, aggressive with Riker about, I'm doing work, blah, blah, blah. Just, is there something about the way that he took him aside and de-escalated without having to just yell at him or bristle, and it was just that kind of quiet calm.
Well, it was a bit of a reversion for Worf, but also showing how much he's grown. Like, he even makes the point where he says there are always options, and she notes that he's changed. I would argue he's changed since season 1. Like, we can really see that growth here.
Yep.
As you guys know, I bring this up a lot. I noted that line, there are always options, which, as Spock always said, there are always possibilities. So that was a nice callback. Speaking of callbacks, that was a nice callback.
It did make me think of the original series, absolutely. I loved Kalar's line, I do bite, to Worf. Like, I love everything about Kalar, honestly.
She's awesome. Yeah.
Not to tip my hand, but she's an amazing character.
There was something about the way that line played that made it a little bit different than the typical cliche line. Mm-hmm. I don't bite unless you want me to. It was just something about the way she landed it. I really liked that.
I think it's the way she didn't try to explain it.
Yes, exactly.
I like her a lot, and I think she's contradictory, but I think that's okay because people are contradictory. So it still made her interesting to me.
Well, that was her human and her Klingon side warring against him.
That's right.
Oh, that's what I was going to... I think I was going to mention that earlier. I think the conversation was about the difference between her and other Klingon women we've seen on the show before. I guess females, since Worf was saying, I'm not a man in the last episode. Mm-hmm. But the human element of it, we've never seen a Klingon with that kind of smooth delivery of things, that type of humor, which I think really adds to it.
Any sense of humor.
Yeah.
Worf
Well, it's a
great
different.
sense of humor.
It's a very different
true.
kind of
That's true.
sardonicness. Sorry,
By the
go ahead.
time he gets Deep Space Nine, Worf is one of the funniest characters on the show by far.
Yeah.
And I think we're already seeing signs of that. But Worf really becomes funny.
Well, and I think she's
Not in a cringy way.
Like, do we have a ball buster on the crew? Pulaski, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, but then she'll be gone here soon.
Right, but I feel like that character's not around all the time.
Not on this. On DS9, I feel like the first officer, Major Kira Nerys, is definitely a very tough woman that doesn't take guns.
Oh, Kira, yeah.
And we'll get Ensign Ro Laren later in TNG, who is Kira Nerys was created because Michelle Forbes decided not to take Ro Laren over to Deep Space Nine, but they're very much in the same vein. I thought that first scene between Kalar and Worf when they're yelling at each other and then Kalar has to go back and smash the table, that was intense and hot, and I was all on board for that.
It was great, and I think you guys had already told me there was going to be more shattered glass. So
if you see a glass table on the next gen, I didn't realize this. This was the greatest Jen pointed out to me. If you see a glass table on the next gen, it's gonna get smashed, and it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens a lot.
Chekhov's glass table.
Yes.
So I just wrote down more shattered glass. It was awesome.
My next note: I really loved the dynamic between Troy and Kalar. Really loved it.
Yeah.
Talking about the half-breed status and their different upbringing and all of that stuff. It was just really great. And it also, I feel like the best guest characters are, first of all, completely fully formed in their own right, which Kalar is. And we learn something about our lead characters from them. And both Troy and Worf. Worf was, of course, the obvious expected one. But we learned a lot about Troy in those conversations.
I'm liking more and more every episode. There's a Troy conversation with another woman. We're getting closer to passing the Bechdel test.
The Troy
almost not quite
episodes of Troy have really because they weren't really talking about Worf, they were talking about other stuff. But the last two episodes, it's like they're finally figuring out what to do with Troy, and she's coming into her own now. Fashion.
Oh man,
I only have one note, and maybe Keith, you're already headed there.
Yeah.
It started with terrible, and this is for Kalar, and then it was like, update, much better. Like her first outfit, I was like, oh, are they going to put her in this the whole episode? And then the next outfit, I'm like, okay, we're good.
She had like three or four just awesome, like superhero level outfits for me. And it was just like, I'm surprised more people don't dress like that in the future.
Yes.
You would see. And just,
I thought you meant at conventions. I thought you meant people didn't cosplay that.
That's actually pretty good too. I didn't tell you.
The silver one when she came out of the tube, there was the red jumpsuit, there was the exercise outfit, and then there was the Klingon warrior outfit. Which was the best one?
I guess I'm leaning toward the exercise outfit, although I liked there's something very like Elektra-esque, like the comic book Elektra, about the second outfit where she dressed up for Worf and their interaction.
Yeah.
Those really impractical bracelets around everything, but it still kind of is interesting. I liked it.
So, which one do you think they made her action figure dress in? Because she did get her own action figure.
Probably.
I think it was the one where it's the one she's wearing when she says that's wrong. I do bite. The red one.
That's the one they should have. Instead, it was the exercise outfit.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And her accessories are the sword from the exercise program, and the mask she wakes up with from the tube, and then the glove from the exercise program. Personally, I think they screwed up her action figure.
You know what? I do like that exercise outfit, actually.
Me, I feel like the red outfit was more, that's what she probably normally wears. The silver and the exercise were more specialty for what she was doing. The
exercise outfit reminds me of, and I hope we can still keep our G rating, reminds me of something out of Playboy layouts from the 70s. So that might be why I'm partial to that. But
canceled.
They both flatter her. So they're both winners. Let's just say that.
I have two more fashion notes.
Okay.
I'm gonna do them probably in the reverse order for where they're relevant, but for a reason. The Klingon ship, when we finally saw them, they woke up. They were totally using the TOS movie Klingon ship uniforms, costume, makeup, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
They felt like the TOS movies Klingons.
Yeah.
in every way, which I guess the movies were about 75 years ago, so that makes sense. They're from that era.
I guess in keeping with the fashion discussion about that, I'd noticed at the end the boots she was wearing. Is that common? They had like the spike horns out of the toe.
Yeah, we see those on a lot of Klingon boots.
I had never noticed that before. Sort of like X-23. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that character, but yeah.
So while I'm on the internet looking for Kalar's outfits, I am finding many cosplayers in both the exercise outfit and the red outfit.
When Worf and Kalar do it in the holodeck, both before and after, apparently their hookup, they're fully dressed.
You beat me to it.
The only thing that's different after sex is Worf has removed his sash.
I think that she didn't have her shrug on either. I think she had shrugs in both of the...
Oh, you're right.
But here's the thing.
But they didn't bother to even... I get the 80s standards of decency. They can't show them half-dressed. Deep Space Nine, we get to see a lot more bodies. But it felt very like... Could you even count... I don't know. It did not seem realistic that they had sex and then got fully dressed again that quickly.
Right. No, I have an anecdote about that, really. It's just one of the few things I remembered about this episode. One of the reasons why the fingernail thing stuck with me, I think, is because at the time I wasn't really getting the fact that they must have gotten completely undressed or rather they got into some state of undress and then completely redressed before the break ended. And my impression was almost like they were suggesting that was the sex, the act of them doing that with their hands.
That's the way I felt.
Was a sex, and it was like it only took till this time through for me to figure out that it was probably just one of those weird 80s things they were doing. That I don't understand why in the direct you wouldn't have her like touching her back to like zip something up, anything to indicate that they were something, right? Mm-hmm. It was just them completely apart from each other.
This is a
already
family
dressed.
show.
But just, I mean, anyway.
At least I'll go back to, it's the TOS episode where they crush the cubes. And they come back and Barbara Boucher is brushing her hair and Kirk's putting his boot on.
Yes, yes, shoes, something. I was about to say,
just give me something. Because to me, that's...
Honestly, I think
I was so confused.
Were more uptight about sex in the 60s.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, I mean, just look at the outfits. Just look at the outfits in the two. You know, speaking of which, when I was watching What Are Little Girls Made Of and Sherry Jackson comes on, I'm like, oh yeah, this is another reason I love TOS so much. Tease although Tease did a good job with some of the outfits here too, but
I feel like
the 60s were just more
back to being a little more sexy.
Yeah.
But Voyager and Enterprise do not. Yeah. The music and everything in their battle and their workout, I was kind of digging it. I didn't think it was too over the top.
Was there a little bit of the Klingon theme from the movies in there? Or was that just imagining
I didn't catch that, but quite possibly. So for the Klingons, sex means marriage. That, again, I don't feel like that shows up outside of this.
Yeah.
I mean, like when that Klingon woman was offering to jump Riker's bones during the exchange program. So I feel like it's got to be more Worf's Russian upbringing than his Klingon background.
Perhaps.
Even though they frame it as it's a Klingon ceremony. Maybe it was an old Klingon ceremony that most Klingons are over.
It's that's back-to-back episodes like that is just very strange.
Very puritanical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, we had Worf gets Data to be his rooster block the same way that this episode.
I noted that too. Data has become the designated chaperone.
I mean, it makes sense. Because after Tasha Yar, he doesn't try to jump anybody else. So, do we ever see Data have relations again until First Contact? I feel like it's the second movie before Data gets another romantic partner.
Why wouldn't he want to have more?
Well,
maybe it's not about want.
Get the pleasure. He doesn't get the pleasure. It's all mechanical for him, right?
I think. I mean that seems to follow.
Well, wait. How would they know when they were done?
Wow.
I think it's very telling that by the next time Data has sexual relations, he has an emotion chip, and he gets a little bit of skin grafted on his body, and the nerve endings that go with it. So,
okay.
It's interesting that in that Naked Now episode that he was even affected by whatever that virus was.
Oh, that made no sense. That's part of why I felt like I hated that episode a lot more. That you guys liked it, and I was not a big fan.
It's got to be, yeah. I mean, I guess. Do they ever really address how that happened or anything? They just kind of
nope. They just glossed right over it.
I mean, that could be really significant. Well, yeah,
could be. The next scene that I have is Captain Worf doing the ruse, the bluff. I really enjoyed that, of course.
Yeah.
And I know at this point they probably didn't have long-term plans for Worf, but when Riker asks him how it felt, and he says comfortable chair, that's our first experience of seeing Worf in command. And as we go on, he's going to become basically the de facto commander of the Defiant on Deep Space Nine, and in Star Trek Picard, it's mentioned he's now the captain of the Enterprise E, or whatever I assume it's still an E. So we definitely get to see Worf follow up on that command stuff and go on that track where he'll become a captain in his own right. We haven't seen him in Picard. We were just told he's now the captain of the Enterprise. So it makes sense to me that he would enjoy it, and I liked seeing that early hint that pays off, even 30 years later. Thinking
back, I'm wondering how the hell I understood anything back then. Just so weird. Like certain things just were like going over my head left and right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I caught it at the time, but just the way that Kalar threw in that last little bit, last little dig at Worf, before their kind of makeup scene, essentially, or actually during the scene where they kind of confront each other again about what happened and concede that they were both a little rigid in their thinking about what was going on. The way she threw in that thing about the Klingons on the other ship being too traditional or something, just that slight implication that she was jabbing at Worf at the same time. I don't know. Seemed like something that was too subtle for me back then too.
Yeah, I certainly didn't pick up these subtleties in my early watching, Keith. I'm right there with you. When Worf is beaming Kalar over, which I liked, I dug that resolution. I thought that made a lot of sense. O'Brien sets the transporter, and the Worf's like, "Okay, you're dismissed," and I'm totally fine with Worf hitting the beamer button and having that moment. But what was weird,
beamer.
I know, sorry. As soon as Worf takes the panel, he just keeps hitting buttons. And it's like, if O'Brien said it, do you need to adjust it? He just keeps hitting buttons. I'm like, stop! O'Brien got it. Maybe that was just me. I have great confidence in O'Brien's abilities.
Maybe he didn't finish. We don't know.
He said it's all set.
Oh, okay.
I liked Kalar's moment of vulnerability there at the end, where she was tempted, she was scared, and Worf kind of agrees, and then she says maybe someday, and then Worf says, "I will not be complete without you."
I wrote that down.
Made me think of young love. I mean, at this point, obviously Worf's still very young. We'll see, and they met even when he was younger, and Worf will find a fulfilling relationship with someone else down the road, but it just
obviously Troy you're talking about.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about Worf's wife when Worf gets married in Star Trek.
What?
Do what now?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Kalar don't get together? Damn it!
No, sorry. Well, he's not done with Kalar. I'm just saying he finds somebody else down the road that he has a deeper, more meaningful relationship with. But I get that first love thing. I get why he's always going to think of Kalar a certain way. And I can't wait for you guys to see what Kalar returns with down the road.
So that Jerry Maguire stole that, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a reverse you complete me, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. They just simplified it.
At the top, we get another one of these. And I feel like Starfleet does this a lot. They call the Enterprise. We can't tell you what's going on, but the person that shows up, they're in charge. Where does this happen in real life?
Honestly, probably.
I know terrible things happen, but
probably with the military. But I will say this is the most pleased I've been with the person that shows up to leave.
Yes, definitely.
I agree, because usually it's a Commodore or some kind of.
I was gonna say exactly. I thought Commodore just immediately. It's like, uh-oh.
And honestly, we should be annoyed with her too, because she shows up and like, don't make any other plans. We're just blowing them up. But there's something about her that just rolls right off.
This was an understatement early in the episode. I wrote, Kalar, I like. So that turned out to be an understatement. Yeah, I liked her a lot. I like I can't remember. I think Kalar says it. She says we have unfinished business. Was that her?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which I wrote down as means we should finally do it.
Yes.
Which they do. These are two, and I have to water these down. Somebody says, "Oh, I think Kalar says it too." She says, "You're upset." Oh no, it's whoever comes in after she smashes the table. They come in and they're like,
Troy.
Oh, it's Troy.
Yes.
She's like, "You're upset." I'm like, "No kidding, no kidding."
But then Kalar basically says, "No kidding." So.
Yeah. And then later, the Klingon ship's coming at them, and then it disappears, and somebody says, "They cloaked themselves." Really? Good job. Thank you.
But I liked that the future technology, they could find the cloaked Klingon ship, the old cloaked Klingon ship.
Right. That's true. But I just thought, I was like, yeah, we know. But I guess we know. But maybe you're a casual viewer coming out from our
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if you guys noticed this, and maybe you guys can help me with this. So when they go in, isn't that a list of exercise regimens? Wasn't that the idea at the holodeck?
I didn't catch it.
Dixon Hill programs in there. I saw it the first time, and I stopped it. I'm like, am I reading this wrong? And I went back, and I'm like, why are there two Dixon? And I should have tried to see if I could read what they were, but I thought that was hilarious.
Could be different novels. Maybe Picard actually went back and adjusted it so it isn't about. So it's more relaxing.
It's smoking cigarettes and drinking bourbon. That's one of them, and the other one is drinking bourbon and smoking cigarettes.
Well, dodging bullets. That's quite a.
No, that's a good one. But I thought that was a cool thing, and I should have looked to see what the other ones were, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
As much as this leads into my next one, which is I may never understand the holodeck, which is also followed by I may never understand Klingon sex.
Since you mentioned the holodeck, I started thinking about that. I guess in the more in the previous episode than this one, but just. This time through we've been watching it, and we talked about this in previous episodes. When I really started thinking about the technology of how it works, and it's
Falls
really
apart.
easy to get into it. The whole go down the wormhole or the rabbit hole of it's mind blowing and maybe a little bit too impossible. I guess they would have to have like multi-directional treadmills everywhere for people to.
Yeah.
Be able to be in the same space and not see each other and
but
I don't know.
Keith, when you think 400 years in the future, think about technology 400 years ago and think about today.
Yeah, but...
Oh, come on. You think the holodeck is more advanced than we are from 400 years ago.
We're really advanced like from 30 years ago, from like 20 years ago. Yeah. It's incredible.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe.
It's at Kirk's time, they still didn't get it right, and they were working on it.
I forgot about that.
Klingon patriarchy is on full blast. When he's expecting her to join him, she's like, no, which was great.
Good for her.
Yeah. Made me like her even more.
That female independence.
Yeah, it was awesome. My last note is it's tough being great in Starfleet. So they have that conversation about, it's kind of that married to the ship thing. Or no, maybe she says it to him, like, well, you're very important and, Starfleet needs you and all that stuff. I used to always do this line about Smallville, which I actually watched half of the first pilot episode the other day. First 3 seasons of Smallville, fantastic.
Oh, the first season's awful.
Oh, I love the first season. So
come on.
That should be an alternate
episode.
Oh my God, are we going to do a Smallville podcast? I think I watched the whole series.
We should do a he said of season 1 of Smallville. I can't believe I watched every episode of Smallville. I can't believe I did, but
I've seen every episode too, and about 2/3 of them were very good. But the first season was crap.
I love the first 3, and then after that, it goes through periods. I'm with you. I think there are periods where I'm like, I'm hanging in here, and then I'm like, oh, I'm in, and then I'm like, and then at the end,
I'm with you on seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I'm just not with you on season 1.
That's fair. I'll do that podcast. It was like, so I used to have this line about Smallville every week with, I guess it was my first wife would have been sitting there next to me, that even if you're Superman, you have trouble with the ladies. And that's kind of a theme of Trek. And in this episode, it's kind of flipped the other way because Kalar has the same issue, which is, we have all these things we have to do that get in the way of simple romance. It makes everything complicated. So, which I actually liked. I like that a lot. So, it explains some of their difficulties earlier in the episode, and why why they can't be together, and gives the episode some nice pathos.
To tie in Smallville to Star Trek, I guess, and just the sci-fi comic book world, just in general, really is just prequel series. They always, it's such a hard sell because of the things they have to do eventually. They can't help themselves. You can't help but start jumping ahead and retconning things or having to separate off the universe and say, well, this isn't the same thing because we're too impatient. We have to bring in these future characters that shouldn't be here already. Mm-hmm. Smallville. I mean, I enjoyed Lois Lane in Smallville, but there was a certain point where you can't just stay in high school forever. You have to kind of start moving on to the other things if you're going to go on for. And I think I don't know if Jamie agrees about the stuff they've been doing with the Star Trek prequel series and so forth, but just
Discovery.
Yeah, Discovery and I guess Enterprise, which I watched like a little bit. Are we doing Enterprise? I guess we have to, right?
Yeah, we're doing Enterprise.
That hasn't come up very much, has it? What's that?
We're not doing Enterprise. That's the one Star Trek show. We're doing Marvel, but we're not doing Enterprise.
But it's funny how seldom that comes up, isn't it?
It is, and I watched
I'd forgotten
a bit
about
of
it.
season 1, and I kind of enjoyed it. And then I watched the whole final season, and it was fantastic. And I heard season 3 was terrific too. But we'll get to it, and I'll find out. Alternate episodes.
Felt like I took my hand earlier. Mine is There's Something About Kalar. So Worf eventually figures out, oh man, I screwed up. I wonder what she's doing. And then he goes and finds her, and shenanigans ensue, and finally they end up back together.
That's exactly the second episode. How did you not know that?
Oh man, yes. I can't wait.
Kidding.
Well, this is when they really start retconning, and we see Worf, getting ready for prom and having a zipper incident and everything.
Exactly. Yep.
So.
Yep.
Honestly, my alternate episode's Kalar too. I mean, I don't want her to give up her career and stay on the ship, but I would love to see more about Kalar.
Yeah.
Whether a spinoff or a miniseries or something. I know now it's not going to happen, but
right.
I would have loved to have followed Kalar and got to see some of her adventures.
Could we do a Kalar reboot? Couldn't that be a Hulu series?
You would think.
But I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Kalar is important unfortunately, because I feel like she was a fully developed character on her own. Kalar is important to the franchise for things she brings to Worf, not for who she is.
Interesting. I mean, that makes sense. Even though, I just want to know about her. So, but I'm also
she's
a man.
only one more episode, but she will have a lasting impact on Worf that extends for the rest of Worf.
Okay. I think the fact that she's 6 foot tall also is appealing.
I like.
But I'm trying to think of somebody. I'm trying to think who would in our modern time who we would cast as.
Is that how tall she actually is? I mean, she did seem rather tall in certain scenes.
I think that's right, Jimmy. I don't know if you have it right there, but I think I read that.
I'm looking it up right
because I didn't realize she was that tall until.
She was kind of towering next to Troy. I noticed
6'2".
6'2".
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
And Michael Dorn, who plays Worf, is 6'3".
Wow.
Okay, that's why.
Fun fact: it came up in the search. John Delancey, who plays Q, is 6'4".
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
What? That's so weird.
I feel like they made Q look shorter.
Yeah. They always have him sitting.
Patrick Stewart is not tall, and
I didn't think so.
Had them on a level with each other. So ranking Wesley, scale of 1 to 10.
I gave him a 1. Was he in there at all?
He wasn't in the episode.
Okay, that's yeah.
Just seeing if you noticed. Who was your annoyance in this episode?
This is weird because I do really like this episode a lot. I have a tie between Worf and Kalar, and this will be the other Seinfeld part of the episode. This reminds me of when Kramer comes in and Jerry and Elaine are fighting, and Kramer's like, "Don't you see? Don't you understand? You two are in love with each other." That's what I want to say to Kalar and Worf. It's like, don't you guys see? So they annoyed me, and because they had legitimate reasons, I think, but it still annoyed me because I just wanted to see them together. So
I get it. Yeah. I'm going to go with Worf as well because this is. I was emotionally immature in my younger days, and I feel like Worf was very emotionally immature in how he treated this relationship because he hadn't had a lot of experience with relationships, and also because he redid O'Brien's perfect work on the transporter. is the thing that bothered me most about this entire episode. So I'm going to go with Worf, even though I loved this episode and loved what it did for Worf's character. Some of it just hit a little too close to home in a bad way.
Similar choice, similar reason. Certainly Worf. Just the whole rigid aspect of. I mean, I know that we've seen his character up to this point embracing Klingon culture to a certain extent, almost overcompensating at times because of his upbringing. But just it seemed hard for me to believe that his character would feel this way or feel that treat things in that such a hard. Traditional patriarchal kind of way of like this has to be this and that and then just what? No, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense for Worf's character, and he will grow somewhat beyond that. But yeah, it's that early, young inexperience, doesn't have the foresight yet. And those of us now that we're so much older. Crush of Star Trek. Steven, did Kalar win you over?
I thought this was going to be a slam dunk, but then you mentioned them last week when we talked about From Up the Long Ladder. I'm still going to go with Kalar, but it was close. It was a lot closer than I thought.
I'm right there with you, and Suzie Plakson is a redhead as well. So I love those fiery redheads.
Yeah,
I agree. It was super super close, but I can't bring myself to ignore Kalar and stick with Brenna because Kalar was so fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm very anxious to hear about Keith. Considering an actress against the same actress.
Yeah, I mean, even if I wouldn't have chosen Kalar on her own merits, it's too hard to pass up the idea of the irony of choosing her against herself. So yes, in that sense. No, this character was definitely, first of all, much more fleshed out, and just it really showed off the range of her being able to get in there and have the comedic timing. I mean, there was Vulcans have a certain kind of comedic timing of their own, certainly, but still, there's just something very smooth about the way way her delivery came across here.
Honestly, her performance as Kalar made me wish that Sailor? Oh wow, didn't even know his name. It made me wish that she had stuck around as the Vulcan. Like she could have played Kalar too, but stuck around as Dr. Sailor.
Right.
Like it just amazes me. She was great as both of these characters, and we don't get.
And from what I remember, she's fantastic as the female Q as well. When we get to that in Voyager,
I have no doubt. Yeah,
I would never have known they were the same person if you hadn't already told me earlier.
I just think Steven might actually like a Q when she plays one. And
I think I will.
That's his crush.
I think I will. This is another alternate episode would be Kalar versus Salar.
Yeah,
and they're stuck on a planet, and they're like on the Gangsters.
Shows up.
Yeah, they're like on Triskelion, and they have to fight each other, and then they realize they have to work together.
I think Dalar's a Bajoran, played by Suzie Plakson.
Are you serious?
No, I'm making.
Oh God!
I'll do the show on one condition: my character's name has to rhyme with all my other ones.
Yeah, she's Qualar in the other episode.
So ranking this episode, we're starting at the bottom, right?
Yeah, hated it.
Hated it. It's 10.
We're going to start at the opposite bottom, otherwise known as the top. Yeah. Measure of a Man, better or worse?
God, the recency bias is going to be so hard. There's something about like having done Star Trek V that just sort of like wiped everything out of my. I don't know why. It just kind of blew everything out of my head from like what we've been doing, and I don't know why. I
want to throw out here right now for the fans of this podcast, because we know we have a few. If that really, really threw you off of throwing Star Trek V in the middle of Star Trek II, there is time to convince us to move Star Trek VI out of the middle of TNG Season 5. So if it bothered you a lot, email in jim@ibdpresents.com or comment on our Facebook post and tell us to move Star Trek VI out of the middle of a TNG season, and we will. Up to you. Otherwise, it's going to be in the middle of Season 5.
I've got just enough OCD where that would bother me, actually,
It bothered me as well, but we committed to the release order.
No. I mean, it would bother me not doing the release thing.
Oh, yeah.
I like the idea that we're doing everything exactly as it would have.
It's going to be real. I think it's going to be a bit annoying when we're jumping back and forth between DS9 and Voyager. There's not as much overlap between DS9 and TNG, but the DS9 Voyager jumping back and forth almost weekly, but sometimes they'll air a couple of one or the other back to back. I think that's going to throw us off a bit.
Maybe. So I think that was the only way to do like Angel and Buffy, for example. And if whenever I go back
Angel
and do
Buffy crossed over from time to time. Voyager only crossed over with DS9 in the pilot, and then it was over. So, anyway, ranking the episode. Above or below Measure of a Man?
I'd probably go below.
Me too.
But, yeah.
But I think we're in the range.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's too much meat going on in Measure of a Man. But yeah, as I was saying, recency bias. I can't feel it. Right now, I feel like I like this more. But what's below that?
Was more fun. Measure of a Man was too tight, too well done. I'm right below that, and this one I think is going to get tough. Is A Matter of Honor, which was Riker going on the Klingon ship. I will say real quick, right below that is Elementary Dear Data, and I believe this deserves to be above that.
Yep.
That's where I was thinking the range was right around there, and I was trying to decide.
Be 2 or 3. Do we want it above or below the other Klingon episode?
I would say below, simply because there's more going on in the other Klingon episode. We got a little bit more about their culture, and just seeing the way that they just seeing the way that modern, I guess at that time, Klingons were reacting to their interactions with humans from Starfleet.
What's right under My Dear Data, or Elementary My Dear Data?
Oh, we're gonna stay above Dear Data, but Q who?
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Steven, can you believe you let a Q episode get to number 4?
I must have liked that more than I thought.
I think you did. Well, now it's about to be number 5, but
yeah.
Point taken.
Yeah, I think I'd put it under the Riker one.
Okay. Honestly,
but I wouldn't be. I don't have a good argument.
If I was ranking by myself, I think I would put it above, but it's so close, I can't get upset with ranking it. Oh,
well, see, now I'm second guess. I really could go either way. Honestly, I'm just saying that I had to pick something arbitrary to think about. And that was the thing that.
I think you're right that one shows Klingons as a culture more, but I think we get a deeper dive into Worf and Kalar as people in this one, and I dig that deep dive into the individual characters. But I also think we get a great dive into Riker in that episode. So I'm not gonna not going to be a spoil sport.
I think that is one of the reasons why I liked it at the time is because of just we could really feel Riker coming into his own at that point. And I was
just reminded why I like Q who because the Borg. That's right. Yeah. So which I think is interesting. These 3 episodes, these 2, 3, 4 are Borgs and Klingons, and it's more than a cursory look at them. It's more of an interest. It's an interesting look, and not in a aren't these people weird? It's a getting to know you kind of a way. I mean, the Borg episode is more of a we're really just getting to know you. But I think that's why I think that helps all 3 of these episodes make them more interesting.
The top 5 all fit into that. Yeah, Measure of Man, Matter of Honor, Emissary, Elementary Dear Data, and Q Who all fit into that.
Yeah.
Season 2 has been wonderful. I'm looking at the bottom of the season, and those aren't bad episodes in my opinion. So we'll get there next week.
I think a measure of this season is that last week I felt like, oh wow, this is a bummer. We were on such a roll, but it's like no. Even then, I didn't hate last week.
No, it was a middling episode.
Yeah.
Next week, Peak Performance. The crew of the Enterprise participates in war games. To look at the longer synopsis,
yes.
Riker will command an old vessel, the USS Hathaway, and act as the enemy. He takes LaForge, Worf, Wesley Crusher, and several others with him.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So we're going to have Picard versus Riker. Split the crew in half.
Nice. Well, I'm really hoping what they need to really solidify this for me as a Commodore. To really just.
I was going to say there is some people overseeing, but none of them are named Commodore or anything.
Fair enough.
I will say it features a guest appearance by Glenn Morshower, who I'm a fan of for sure. He's done so many great shows. So looking forward to it. And Armin Shimmerman is back as another Ferengi.
Nice.
Huh. Oh, I did think
not the main Ferengi he plays, but it's the second time playing a Ferengi.
I thought the probe in this episode might have Scotty in it, actually.
No, not yet. I think that's season 5.
Oh, okay, we got a while. Okay.
Yeah, we got a while for Scotty.
Few years.
So until then, live long
and prosper, sweet, sweet Kalar.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?